Hello, I'm Mariette DiChristina, the Dean of the Boston University College of Communication. I'm also an alum of COM and the parent of a recent BU grad. Welcome to this afternoon's COM Talks event, Breaking Barriers, Inclusive Storytelling Through Animation. This event is being recorded and will be available later on COM's website and its YouTube channel. In 2019, the USC Annenberg Inclusion Initiative and Women in Animation conducted a study and found some interesting facts. 31% of top animated films had women producers, and 3% had women film directors. Women of color represented less than 3% of animated films and television series. As audiences demand better representation in animated films and television shows, how are studios creating the pipelines for that representation in the front and behind the cameras? What steps are people and organizations taking to break the barriers to have more inclusive storytelling through animation? I'm glad you're here today because we'll be talking about that with our expert panelists that I'll introduce in just a second. When you have questions, please put them in the little Q&A box at the bottom of your screen rather than in the chat. And do please feel free to put those questions in at any time. There'll be plenty of time later to discuss them in the event, I promise. Now it's my real pleasure to introduce today's wonderful speakers. Please first welcome Pilar Flynn, who is co-showrunner, producer of Disney-branded television's Marvel's Moon, Girl, and Devil Dinosaur, based on Marvel's hit comic books. She's also a twice Emmy Award-nominated producer for her work on Disney's Elena of Avalor, which follows Disney's first princess, inspired by diverse Latin cultures and folklore. Pilar is a native of Chile and Ecuador and began her animation career at DreamWorks, where she co-produced the award-winning short First Flight and worked on the production of films such as The Road to El Dorado, Sinbad, Spirit, Madagascar, and Flushed Away. Pilar then went to serve as associate producer of the animated feature film Astro Boy. She's also co-produced the groundbreaking R-rated animated feature Sausage Party, starring Seth Rogen. Pilar currently serves on the board of directors for the Latino Film Institute, a nonprofit organization founded by actor Edward James Olmos. And she graduated right here from COM in 1997. Welcome to you.
That's right. Thanks for having me.
So glad you're here. Now let's say hello to Jennifer Young Nelson, who is supervising director of Netflix's Love, Death, and Robots, Blur Studios. Jennifer has spent her career directing in TV and feature animation. She's the first woman to solo direct a major studio animated feature with DreamWorks' Kung Fu Panda 2, for which she received an Oscar nomination. She also directed Kung Fu Panda 3, the live-action feature The Darkest Minds, and is supervising director for volumes 2, 3, and 4, and now 4, of the multi-Emmy winning series Love, Death, and Robots for Netflix. So awesome to have you here today.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Now let's say hello to Kate Spencer, who's an independent producer with 25 years of experience working on award-winning animated features. She began her career at DreamWorks Animation, where she co-produced How to Train Your Dragon Hidden World, co-executive produced How to Train Your Dragon 2, and production managed the original How to Train Your Dragon. She produced both the holiday special Dragon's Gift of the Night Fury and the making of documentary Where No One Goes, the making of HTTYD2. Kate also oversaw all franchise materials for the Dragons films. Her first DreamWorks films were The Road to El Dorado and Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas. On both productions, she supervised the story departments. And on Over the Hedge, Kate supervised the creative process from inception through post-production, as well as producing the short Hammy's Boomerang Adventure. Kate's creative journey began with her love of film and storytelling and a BS from Boston University's College of Communication. And Kate executive produced one of the longest running college TV shows, Bay State, and held internships at Boston Channel, 68, WABU, and NBC Europe, London. Awesome to have you here.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Now I'm going to introduce our lovely moderator, Rachel Richmond, after which I will turn over the mic. Over her career, Rachel Richmond has worked at studios such as Netflix Animation, Skydance Animation, Blue Sky Studios, Blizzard Entertainment, and Flying Bark Productions. From video games to feature films, she's championed creatives and partnered with them to bring their visions to life. In addition to producing animation, Rachel is passionate about addressing diversity and inclusivity in the entertainment industry and creating pathways into the industry from underrepresented groups. And today she's working with animation line producing at Flying Park Productions and is a COM alum from 2010. Welcome to you, Rachel. Thanks a million. And now I'll turn over the mic to you.
Thank you so much, Mariette. And I just want to kick it off by saying thank you to everyone who put this panel together. It's so exciting to be here today. As Mariette said, I think for, what we're going to talk about today is, of course, inclusive storytelling and also diversity in animation. And I think just looking around at this amazing, amazing panel of just like badass women in animation with these amazing storied careers who are so talented, I have to say I am also geeking out about this right now. So with that being said, I wanted to say thank you to my panelists. Thank you so much for being here, and we can just jump into the conversation. So the first question that I have for all of you, what was your personal journey into animation, and when did you know that you wanted to pursue a career in the animation industry, and kind of what were those first steps in the industry? What did that look like for you? Maybe we can start with let's start with Kate.
Aha. Hello. So the briefest version of it was not knowing anything about animation or what the jobs were. And coming out of comm, TV and film, knowing coming west to LA was probably going to be necessary, but I wasn't sure how that was going to happen. So I finished a semester early, actually, which meant I kind of got ahead of sending out resumes and looking into things. There weren't a ton of websites then, like no online resources, no online information. And I think a thing that's going to come up a lot today is the idea of the best network that you will ever have are your peers right now. So if you're someone that's still in school or about to leave school, I didn't know any high-powered fancy people. I had no family in the industry or on the West Coast. And I was really lucky that people like Pilar had graduated a year ahead of me. People like Kim Mackey, who's not on this panel today, but deserves more than a shout out as graduating 2 or 3 years ahead of us. There were just people out here that we could send our resumes out to. I had a phone interview with Mark Swift from DreamWorks, who's just on the Oscar-nominated Puss in Boots movie he produced. But he did a phone interview and it was late at night, and basically it came down to there's a PA job and it's yours if you can make it out here, but you have to be here in 2 weeks. So bottom line, something I don't know I would let a kid do today. I quit 2 jobs and 2 internships. I moved out of my house in Austin that I lived with 7 other people and drove cross country. I took kind of a week to dismantle my life on the East Coast and a week drive. And I started at DreamWorks the Monday that I arrived and was there for 21 years. And it took that kind of craziness of looking back going, how did I ever think that was going to work? But I kind of felt like, and that's where the luck hits. Absolutely. Like I fell into this very starting PA job at a place that was also a new company and building itself. So there was a lot of opportunity and just the trial by fire, and everybody did 5 jobs and we were all kind of figuring it out at the same time. And I feel lucky to this day because I found my people that I didn't know. Again, that the animation industry worked the way it worked. I didn't know what the jobs were there, but starting as a PA and just getting to see all the different departments and working your butt off, and helping wherever you can help, it kind of gave me a look at what's out there. And for me, I kind of fell in love with the storytelling aspect of it early on. So I ended up in front end departments with people like Jen, who was one of my first heads of story that I ever worked with. And again, and that compounded that idea of just falling in with brilliant people that I just wanted to learn from and take care of. and it created this, family in the animation industry that I think to this day is why a lot of us like working in it.
Still here, yeah.
Yeah.
And then actually, Jen, what was your pathway into animation?
Well, it's sort of funny because when Kate was talking about, not really knowing what to do at the very end, trying to find your way in, I do have family in the business because my two sisters are both storyboard artists. All three of us do storyboards as well. But in college, we had a guest speaker, Dave Lowry, who's a storyboard artist in the business. And I was like, I don't know what storyboards are. I didn't go to animation school. I didn't learn about animation at school. I'm an illustration major. I'm an artist. So unlike Kate and Pilar, I came from the art side of things. I draw, I do things like, completely not related to the production side of production. And Dave Lowry came to do guest speaking. And of course, in college, you get guest speakers all the time. And I saw what he did. And I thought, I want to do that so badly. You know that thing in college, you show your portfolio to the guest speaker and say, this is what I want to do. I want to do this so badly. And my sisters also had met him. And Dave Lowry said, hey, there's this job. I've got too much work. There's no way I could take this job. There's this little tiny animation studio and they need somebody in there. And so they hired my sister, Gloria, my oldest sister. And so she was working there for a little bit. And then she told me in my final semester, because I was doing independent study, had a little bit of extra time, she said, they need a PA. If you want to do a PA job, make copies, go get coffee for people. They need a PA. And I know a recommendation for somebody who's not crazy, my sister. So you want a PA job while you're finishing up your last semester? I said, oh yeah, it was in Woodland Hills. And that's about 35, 40 miles from my college. And I had like a really, really rundown car that was a hand-me-down from my mom that I was borrowing. And so I was driving after class, taking class in the morning, drawing cannibals for my illustration class, and then driving, I barely knew how to drive very well on the freeway, driving to Woodland Hills and working this hole-in-the-wall little animation studio, making copies, doing little packets for overseas studios, and learning for the first time what an office job was like. I was like, wow, this is what it's like working the business. I'm seeing all this stuff, even in a tiny studio. Mm-hmm. And because I'm an artist, I can't help drawing. And a producer saw that I could draw. And so he left for a bigger company and he just said, come with me, there's a job. And so that's how it all started. It's just, you take the first job that you can, has maybe nothing to do with what you want to do. And next thing you know, you're working animation. I had no idea, but it's all about random connections.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the golden piece of advice. And I want to drill down more into the connections part of this, because you guys have such a fascinating story between the three of you. But Pilar, what was your pathway into animation like?
So mine is similar to Kate's, that I went to Boston University because I grew up mostly in Latin America and Europe, did not know animation was a possibility or something I could do, especially because unlike Jen, I cannot draw at all. But I really wanted to work in film and TV and tell stories, and BU had an international student program. And so I got into comm via that angle and just loved working with my friends and making films. And Kate was someone I knew really well there. And actually, we have a whole group of friends that we did like after school activities and worked at BU TV with that ended up moving out here together, including, by the way, fun fact, Kate's and my husbands, Michael Chance and Dave Kalbeitzer, also went to BU and are now executives in the industry. So, I mean, talk about connections, Yeah. So that was really amazing. But when I got there, I had always loved animation so much as a little girl, especially because wherever I moved, it would be dubbed in whatever language I was in. And it felt like it was the family that moved with me. I had such a deep bond with it. But it wasn't until, similar to what Jen was saying, a producer from Aardman came to speak at one of our classes at BU. And I was a huge fan of the Aardman shorts and Wallace and Gromit. And when this guy came in and was a producer, he spoke about his job and what he did. And it was the first time I ever realized, oh my God, you can work in animation and not draw. But still, in relation to this panel, because he was this white man from England, I also didn't see myself reflected in him. So even though it sounded so exciting and interesting, it didn't quite connect for me just then, that it was something I could do or somewhere I would belong. So after we graduated, we moved out to LA, a bunch of us friends from BU, and some came a bit later, kind of like he was saying, Kim Mackey and Kristen McKittrick had moved out the year before, and they said, come out here, we've got an amazing position at DreamWorks Features at the time, was just starting up. I didn't even have a green card, so so getting a job there anywhere was another struggle that I can tell you about for another day. But they were the ones that first started and said, oh my God, you guys, Spielberg is in every day. There's things called storyboard artists that are pitching amazing boards, and there's writers on the same floor as artists, on the same floor as production people. And I thought, what is that magical land that they're speaking of? And yes, I want to be a part of it. And so, yeah, it was them that got me the job. And then consequently, we would work really hard and prove ourselves. And they would say, are there more of you? Like, is there anyone else like you? And because of our BU connections, and I do want to add, we were kind of the group that not only went to BU, we were the ones that went above and beyond. We were the ones that were at BU TV every night of the week, shooting sci-fi shows, making our own shows, like doing live action projects and helping one another. So we were kind of the film nerds that went above and beyond. And we are the ones that kind of pulled one another in. And yeah, it's been amazing to see everybody elevate, and so many people doing incredible jobs. So exactly what you say, connections, those friends, it starts where everybody is now in college. You never know where the opportunities will come from.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when I talk to people about animation, I always mention how it's much smaller once you're inside of it. And then because when you first get into animation, you may not know that many people. And so you kind of feel like, oh God, there are all of these people know each other. Will I ever have that? And then suddenly you blink, it's 15, 20 years later. And now you're that person and everyone's moved up, they're executives and directors. And so it's like that graduating class. It's like, oh, well, this is my class of 2010. This is who I entered in with. And you look around and you see kind of how those connections blossom and bloom. And I think, for the three of you've all worked together before, you've known each other for many, many years. And yeah, I would love to just dig in a little bit about the power of making connections in the animation industry. And then, any suggestions that you have for fostering truly genuine connections, which is the most important thing. Yeah, just a open question to anyone, how can people create genuine connections with each other in a working environment?
It's kind of funny because the three of us have worked together, as you mentioned. We were one of the first things that I did when I got to DreamWorks. I got to work on Sinbad. In fact, were we working on Spirit, Kate, as well? Or was it? Yeah, it was very first things that we did. And, Kate was starting out, I was starting out, we're all starting out. And we sort of got to learn to become friends. And if you become friends, you really go above and beyond and try and help each other every day, make every day fun. And because it's hard working in animation. People don't realize it's hard. It's something that's hard to do. And we were there for each other, to listen to each other, to help each other sort of get through the day and just get better. So I think it was a real wonderful thing. It's a lifelong friendship. We've been friends for a very long time. Every time we see each other, it's like, oh my gosh, there you are. So that's what makes the hard days better.
I think that's exactly part of it. Is, again, I was so lucky to end up, who knew that our paths would cross in that way, because it took, the kindness of it's two worlds, production and the artist side of it. And back then it was a much more physical process, right? So as they're doing all their storyboards, they need to be copied and pinned up, and the dialogue, you're changing what's in the script is changing to what's going on the boards. But there's a lot of just support of the story process. And that could have just been hard work and late nights, but because of, and someone like Jen comes at it with love and support, and she thinks about the people around her. So we had a team of, story team that was actually pretty 50-50 male, female. even then. And it was just it wasn't like that on every movie. So for me, it was a really nice start to it. And then when I went off to other films and other teams, it also gave me the confidence to try and recreate that, and to kind of even to the things of like when Jen would teach, you know, some board artists who might be tying things down too much or overthinking a process. There was like a silly thing that you'd be like, I'm taking away your pencils and you're only drawing with a Sharpie today. And that's all you're gonna get. But just things that would even help on the artist side that I could bring up later on other teams. And it's that kind of thing, that trust, that because everybody works so hard and you see them working so hard, I think it builds more of a trust in us, which again is why your peers, as they rise and they have worked next to you in the trenches, they are much more likely to reach out to you than, you know, when I moved from DreamWorks to Netflix and ran into some story struggles and issues. Like Jen is literally the first person that we called to say, could you just come in and just spend a day with us and take a look at the pitch and just get advice. And like literally that one day of advice would save us 3 months of overthinking something.
Yes.
I'm like a therapist.
It is for both of us. I think that it's psychology is a big part of leadership on the directing and producing sides both.
Yeah. Everything they say, the animation industry is so small. We are kind of like a family, and any job I've ever gone to, I've already known somebody on that job. It's that small. You just like always cross paths. And it's funny because even when I started, for example, at Disney TV on Elena, the production executive and the creative exec were both people I had worked with back at DreamWorks. And the creative exec was someone that I had literally pinned board with till 2 a.m. until our fingers were calloused. And when I started on the job, people would, would be so impressed that I could just call her up and be like, hey, Di, I think that, or, she's someone Jen and Kate know too, because now she was, a big intimidating executive to all of them. But to me, she was just my friend that we'd stay up late, eating pizza, talking about movies with. And so, yeah, those deep connections were so important and continue to be, to the point where I haven't used a resume for many years, because like Kate was mentioning, a lot of these jobs in animation, it's more about reputation or who you know, or, pulling someone in that is known to do a good job. So yeah, those bonds and connections are extremely important.
And I have it's like a slightly related question. I'm going to pull this from the Q&A. And I'm going to slightly put a little bit of a spin on it, but, with the world changing, and I think with a lot of remote working opportunities kind of popping up on different productions, different maybe styles of working on features and series, do you see the animation industry becoming more open to kind of a remote working setup for productions? And if so, what are some of the benefits, and maybe also what are some of the challenges that come along with that? I know we've been talking a lot of like how important it is to work side by side with people to foster those connections. In your experience, what do you think of where the industry is going? Do you see it being more open to remote working opportunities, and how can people kind of still maintain these types of connections working remotely?
It's interesting about the remote thing, because even before COVID and everyone going remote, on Love, Death, and Robots, everything was remote because we were working with studios around the world. It's kind of like you're working with, European studios in the morning and then Asian studios in the evening. It's just time zones, and you go through an entire production and you've never actually physically met anyone. And I think that there's great things in that you have access to anyone. You could literally have somebody who's a hobbyist in some, European country that's working out of their garage and doing crazy and weird things, and say, hey, let's let you stay working in your garage, do whatever crazy thing you want, and you can work on a show for Netflix. And so it's not relegated to only people that are in LA. And so that's been really great. But the negative side of it is that you don't get the happenstances. You don't happen to just run to someone in the kitchen of the company and say, hey, I heard you talking about something else. That gives me an idea. Why don't we collaborate on something? Especially if you're new. If you're looking for the sort of accidental mentorships, which is where the natural great sharing of information can happen. It's a lot harder to do that when Zoom calls have to be dedicated to a subject. So what we did was we would often set up Zoom meetings just for networking, not about anything, just so we could just talk about whatever is coming up. And I think that sort of helps bring the spontaneity of the office into something like the Zoom call.
That's really brilliant. I love that idea of setting up, like, being more intentional with networking, especially I think, conversations that I've had with other people, it's like, it's very easy for me to kind of take for granted, even my small amount of experience in the industry, versus everyone else's. But then I look at younger people coming in, and they don't have the same benefit of having worked physically with people for, over a decade. So I think that's super brilliant about just being more intentional with providing others with that opportunity. I know
I
Kate.
think, yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I was
Yeah.
about to throw it to you. Yeah.
I think, because it's the same thing on both sides, right? Artistic and production. When you're just starting, you do gain so much more being all together as a group, because you get those opportunities that just come up, and especially for the production folks to have access to the artistic side, that's really where I think most of my education on the real filmmaking of animation came from, being lucky enough to be in a studio that everybody was in one place. And you could go floor to floor, and I learned from story and animation and lighting and like every area. And it kind of makes me sad that that's something that we've lost that a little bit. And it's not just about the COVID or the remote side, but the changing in the business, right? It's less studio based. On the positive side, there's more production houses than ever, so there's more opportunities, but we're spread worldwide. On the positive side of that, because we now have worldwide productions, we're seeing so many more wonderful, incredible, specific, unique stories being told. So there's this battle, like it just keeps going back and forth. And I think it's on both sides, the intentional piece. People like me need to be, from the producer, line producer, production manager, think about training in a way that you maybe haven't ever, because it happened kind of naturally. We all took advantage of, there aren't books on this. There was nothing that we could have learned before going into production and animation. There's one or two people that have kind of like got things down on paper. It's just not how it works. I think Pilar and I put together the first PA training handbook at DreamWorks because we had just been through it, became little coordinators and went, there's no one to like, let's just put down on a piece of paper what helped us. But that kind of thing, if someone's just working out of their house, they're not going to get those little bits of feedback. And as a PA, soaking up how to write an email, how to communicate, how to call up the artists and talk about the schedules, like all of these things that seem really easy in a way to do, and like you might just let the new person do it. They need that feedback, and they need to get used to the idea of constructive criticism, because it's a team sport, and we're going to spend 5 years working with 300 people, and every single like there's 3 of us on screen, but every single person that it took blood, sweat, and tears to make the thing. And it's hard to really understand that if you're new to the business and you're not seeing all those puzzle pieces be put together. So I think, again, I think Pilar maybe speak to that, the idea of like, because you as at the top of your pyramid, probably had to do a lot of training.
I totally agree with you that we have to find a way to think differently about it, because those opportunities that you and Jen were just talking about aren't there. But a huge positive to having this remote opportunity is that it can finally make leaps towards helping us close that equity gap, because the difference between equality and equity is everyone in the room, you give everyone in the room the same opportunity. But equity is realizing there's a ton of people not even in the room, with no access to the building, not realizing there's even a door that you can possibly
job. Yeah.
So what this has now done is allowed us to expand out beyond the single room thinking that we had before. So on our crew, for example, now that's given us the opportunity to hire a coordinator that couldn't move out immediately. They could only move out 6 months later, that before wouldn't have even gotten the chance, or someone on our crew that has to take care of their sick mother can, do it more from work. And especially for people of color and people from underrepresented groups, that equity gap is huge. And that is what mostly holds them back. It was also the reason why, so the Latino Film Institute that I'm on the board of, we have an arm of it called the Youth Cinema Project. And originally that project was to do outreach to schools and especially in underrepresented communities and teach them film and teach them the tools and show them that they can do it, and how exciting that can be. When the pandemic hit, that shut down, and it was so depressing to not be able to continue that work because it was so important. So we quickly pivoted and instead made that entire program an animation program and taught everyone remote, everyone via Zoom. And it was so successful that now we've kept it going. So now there's a whole new crop of little kids that never would have known, kind of like we did growing up, that animation was even a possibility. So that's been really exciting for me to be able to, again, bring people like way outside the building and pull them in and give them the chance that they otherwise never would have had.
Pulling in a question as well from the Q&A. So this is kind of moving a little bit more towards like storytelling and, creativity in the industry. So we've seen over the past, decade, just like an explosion in projects, like Spider-Verse, like Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, Encanto, Soul, that are extraordinarily popular and are really like lauded for authentic representation of people from underrepresented groups in animation, be that behind the scenes or characters in the films or the types of stories. So do you, from your perspective and from your experience, what does true and authentic representation look like in animation? And then how does this work from the top down? From executives and directors on through to the crew, how do we ensure that projects are truly authentic and in the representation of different groups?
I can jump in with that one if you like, since I've been doing so much work in that. So when I worked on Elena of Avalor, I was so excited to work on the first ever Disney Latina princess and to see that representation. There were still only a few of us Latinas on that show, but I saw the impact it had on little kids, on my community, on my own family. And I knew I wanted to do something, even to push the needle even further. And when Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur came up at the studio, I just knew that was the one. And from the start, our leadership team, especially because it was Lawrence Fishburne and Helen Suglin that brought it to the studio, they made it their mission, and they would state that they wanted a diverse crew. They wanted diverse leadership. They brought on Steve Loader as the executive producer. He's done a lot of female-centric, successful shows, but even for him too, he knew from the beginning how important it was. So when I came on, we had whole discussions around this. It wasn't just about the creative. It wasn't just about making the show successful, making it a Marvel project. I mean, there were already so many elements, but to us, the most important thing was making sure that it was represented authentically, both on screen and behind the scenes. So to me, after 3.5 years of doing this and feeling like we have amazingly successfully done that, most of our crew, 84%, are women, members of the LGBTQ plus community or people of color. And I think you can feel the difference, on screen and the show and the way the characters speak and the tapestry of the colors and movement. But we did have to go through several steps. And for me now, looking back on it, I think the 3 things we did that, hopefully others will continue to do is, the first is to have the right intention. And by that, I don't mean just being able to check off a box, that's a mandate by the studio, but truly having that intention, verbalizing it, like I was telling you, making it your mission statement. But then after that, you have to find the talent, to step in and do it. And that can be pretty difficult because, again, that equity gap is so huge. For so long, people of color have not had any kind of seat at the table. So now to grab people from outside that room, and throw them into positions of leadership and expect them to sink or swim is not the way to do it. So you have to bring people in and make them believe that you want them for the right reasons, make them believe that you're going to support them, elevate them, mentor them, And it made all the difference in the world that already from the beginning, we had a diverse leadership, because I can tell you it made such a difference when we're also, you know, as I was saying, majority women, when it was me calling women and saying, you know, we want this show to be represented by women, by diverse women. We're going to support each other. Do you have a family? You know, do you need to pick up your kids? We are going to be there for one another. It wasn't even about money. Like, people just wanted to feel like they belonged and were supported. And then finally, finding ways to mindfully and consciously close that gap from everything, you know, I mentioned to you before, just all the way through. So we have created on Moon Girl, especially, a very collaborative form of leadership, where we invite everybody in the crew, from PA to the writers, to board arts, to coordinators, everybody. We invite them all to tell us their thoughts, their ideas. If they see something that doesn't work, to let us know. And I see it as kind of a circular form of leadership, as opposed to the traditional pyramid or triangle form of leadership, where, I mean, I'm Latina, so the way I see it is like, you know, when you have a dance circle and you may be the host of the party, you may be the one starting that dance circle, but you want everyone facing each other. You want everyone to take turns going in the front. And when they're in the front, everybody like claps and, you know, and then they pull somebody else in.
Yeah.
That to me is a successful form of leadership that is inclusive, that that allows for people who are culturally shy, or for so many generations we've been told to hold back and not share our thoughts, that feel like they can speak up and share their thoughts, and that they'll be supported. So it's a lot of work, but to me, the job does not stop once you've hired the person. That's when your job begins, because it's all about the emotional support and training, especially for, you know, a lot of us have so much past trauma or generational trauma. It is a real thing. You know,
it's real. Yeah.
And that is the hardest thing to overcome. We've got plenty of talent, plenty of, you know, push, you know, and drive. It's just, yeah, that fear, you know, is what holds a lot of us back. So
That is so refreshing to hear. And like, honestly, every production should be run that way. You know, it's just like you guys have been saying, animation is it's a team sport. And I find myself flashing back to a conversation that we had the other day. Jennifer, you were talking about kind of, you know, it's not only about diversifying, you know, the candidate pool for the entry-level positions, but also finding people who are going to be your future directors. I would love for you to just kind of touch on that, especially from like the creative angle, and how you can support, mentor, and grow tomorrow's directors, especially in these spaces that can be a little bit challenging.
Absolutely, because I mean, it's so amazing what you're doing, Pilar, because it's so wonderful and systemic what you're doing. I think within that, though, there is the smaller everyday things that is more individual focused, because right now there's so much great work being done getting people the opportunity to get in. You see so many, I see some more and more women, people of color, people who have not had the traditional opportunities coming into these entry-level jobs just to be in the room so that they have a chance. But the thing is that I think there is that sort of that gap, as you're saying, Pilar, of where are the next generations of leaders? Where are the supervisors? Where are the directors? Where are the people that are in charge of things? So they can create an even bigger bubble of influence and safety so that they can encourage the next generation forward. And I think that it's because that first job that people get is low risk. A lot of companies are saying, yeah, let's get a PA. I mean, I got my first job as a PA pretty much as being like, hey, there's no risk getting a college student in there. I mean, what harm can that do? They don't get paid very much. Why not? So that first job is still amazing to get, but it is not the game changer. The first job is all about survival, because the bar is pretty low. If you can do the bar of work, you're okay. You're not going to get fired. That's survival. But in order to really show what you can do, to show what makes you worth promoting, that's the second job. And I think what we need to do individually in places wherever we can, find ways to encourage the opportunities in the next job. It's not the first job where you can show what you can do. It's the second job where you can show what makes you unique. And that's why people gravitate to you and say, wow, I've seen that you have an interesting voice. And there's this great opportunity as a promotion, as a supervisor, as a director, and that's your second job, your third job. It's getting that next job, which is a real hurdle because that's higher risk for the people giving out those jobs. So it's something that I really believe in. I've been trying very hard. Whenever I see somebody in that position of like, maybe they could get their second job, it's just push, get those people in there so they can show why they are worth being there. And that's how you're going to get that next generation of leaders.
Yeah. And let me say something we did on Moon Girl because of that, which has been great. And I hope we can do more of, is because, you know, sometimes you don't even have that job open. So we flagged people that we felt were ready to take that next step up, but maybe they were trepidatious or that job didn't exist. And we would create in between jobs. So we created associate director, associate story editor. We worked with the union to create a new trainee editorial position, because to get an apprentice editor job, you have to be in the union, but to get in the union, you have to do a union job. And to get that, you have to have someone mentor. So we worked with the studio and with the union to create these in-betweens so that people who we believed in could kind of get halfway elevated, but could get mentored by the people above and could get those credits, you know, too. So that, because to your point, usually people on the outside don't want to hire you unless you've already done the job. But how do you do the job? No one wants to hire you. So by doing that, it gave them, you know, that kind of like step up without sinking or swimming them, giving them the credit, giving them the confidence. And most of those people that we gave those in between jobs are now all elevated to fully those positions, which I'm so excited about. But I do have to say that also takes you working for a studio that will support that, because that is not easy. That takes time and that takes extra money. And we are so lucky that at Disney, we would go to them and say, okay, you have this diversity and inclusion initiative. We've got these 3 incredible people. We'd like to give them a raise, and we'd like to add more time. And we need a couple extra revisionists to backfill for them, you know, and first studios will balk. But then now that they're seeing the results and now that they're seeing how amazing Moon Girl has turned out because of that, you know, hopefully they'll do more. But yeah, it takes a lot of effort.
Well, and I think the incredible thing in animation, because everything is from scratch, right? Like this is, we are creating this world breath by breath and square by square, that we're calling each other in the studios on, not just checking those boxes, but once we're getting this broader world of people involved, it filters into every decision. So all of those people that you're bringing into the room that are now weighing in, times that, you know, we spent many years just being the flies on the wall and not really being asked to speak or speaking for ourselves. And now you get to see the impact in every frame of animation. Like I think more than ever, I'm loving the explosion of some of the, you know, the stuff Rachel you mentioned, but the work that's out there, and Dad Bounty Hunter, like there's just an endless number of shows today that it makes such a difference. And it's in, that's truly, to me, the inclusive storytelling piece of it, right? Is getting it into the actual creative on the screen, and the perspectives that we're seeing, and it's tremendous. And I think that's part that it's a little bit harder, because even the 3 of us don't have green light ability. We are not the people that are spending the
We should.
And it's interesting because as a group right now, like we've all 3 been in the studio and worked outside of the studios. So we've seen a difference in what they're looking for, absolutely. And in the pitches, absolutely. And I can't say that I haven't been to a studio in the last 2 years that hasn't asked for, I want broader storytelling. I want unique perspectives, like pitch us things that are, these are the projects we want to make. And they ask the right questions to the people that are pitching about what's your authentic connection to that. So like, whose story are we telling? And is it your theme? And is it your, and that's great. Like that's definitely different than it was 5-10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Right. We're going back to time. Like I can remember pitching 10 years ago and being told we don't do female leads at the studio. Like it's just one of our, and you go, I don't even know what to say. So that is not the world that we live in anymore, thank God. And things like Turning Red coming out and being you know, we fight through the idea of something being a girl movie or a boy movie, right? There's all these things that are market tested and again studio approved, and that we as well are battling that every day and trying to get in there. So they're definitely listening for these pitches, but it doesn't, once you get in the door, it's still that work every single day that Pilar's doing, like with all of these people that are now getting a chance. If you're not in the room, you can't talk. And if you're in the room and no one is listening to you or giving you the chance to talk, then that doesn't matter. So each step has it's come a long way, but we have so much more room.
Yeah.
To go.
So I think, you know, one other question that I have before we kind of dive into the Q&A, is all of you have had experience working on animated projects that are like gritty or darker, or maybe like violent, or, you know, whatever, what, you know, the ones that I love, adult animated, mature projects, all of those things, they live in a special place in my heart. That's why I love this panel of women. But so all of you have had experience working on projects like that. Have you felt that, you know, as creatives, as producers, that you've run up against any type of stereotypes being women in those types of spaces? And how have you both operated within them, and then also maybe like flipped the stereotypes on their head to capitalize on like that experience?
I think I have one advantage in that I draw. I'm an artist, and so I've always liked action scenes and stuff. And if, as an artist, just do it, show it, and people go, ah, okay, that's kind of all you need to do. I was heavily into action scenes, and I wasn't given big action storyboard scenes in the beginning. And I was given all the touchy-feely, emotional, romantic scenes, which to me, if anyone knows me, they know that's not what I am. And so I had to do a big action scene on a movie, and I just had to bang it out really fast, put all my heart and soul into it, and just show it. And if you show it, there's no denying it. It's bad business if someone sees something there and realize, oh, it's already there. I paid for it. Might as well use it. And so as an artist, you can show it. You don't have to ask permission, just show it, do it, put it on your website. People look at it and go, oh, I don't care what the person that did it looks like. There's the work, and that speaks for itself. So that's kind of the path forward as an artist, but it's different if you're in production.
Did that help you in going into the live action directing piece of it? Oh, because again, you're one of the very few, like there's not a lot of people like you in that world. Yeah.
There's not that many. And I do think it's because I have a very prolific personal drawing life where I just draw stuff for myself. And most of the work that I've gotten has come from my personal work. You know, people know what I do, but I don't think you would hire the Kung Fu Panda director to do a live action movie or do work on incredibly dark stuff for Love, Death, and Robots. I mean, it just doesn't quite match. But it's because I would secretly show the people on those shows, this is what I want to do. And here it is. And then they would not have to leap so far in their mind in order to go there. So it's definitely like personal projects.
Yeah. Well, and for me, one of the greatest joys and delights of my life is that I have a giant poster of Sausage Party up in my office at Disney TV. It's signed from Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg and says, Pilar, you made this filth possible. Thank you. And I love having it up there because people come into my office and when they see it, they look me up and down. They're like, you co-produced that? And I'm able to say to them, yeah, why not me? And what's amazing is when I was a little girl, the short stories I wrote were always about serial killers. My favorite one was about a serial killer that no one could catch because she was a woman. And so nobody even suspected her. And at BU, my independent films were the darkest of any of the students did. So why not me? But I will tell you a story. And that's that when they first offered me the job on Sausage Party, I first turned it down. And the reason was that I had just had my second baby. And I wanted so badly to do it. To me, I was like, oh my God, finally a PG, you know, R-rated CG feature. But I had these two little kids and I knew it would involve travel. I knew it would involve, you know, Seth and the guys were in Culver City, Megan Ellison and Anna Perna were in Beverly Hills. So I turned it down. But what happened was I got a call and they said, Megan Ellison wants to meet with you. And I was like, what? And they said, yeah, she wants you to come down and meet with you. And I was like, what the? So I drove all the way to Beverly Hills to Megan Ellison and she sat me down and she said, I just want to know, why did you turn the job down? And because it was a woman and because she was really wanting to know, I opened up to her and I said, well, I just had my second baby and I don't know how I'd travel and all that. And she did something for me that I've never forgotten, that I do to others to this day. She said, oh my gosh, you have two beautiful daughters. Absolutely, you should be there for them. And she said, well, what if you work from home? You know, we're traveling all the time. We're you know, everywhere. We're in Vancouver, you know, they're in Beverly Hills. What if you did this from home and did a lot of calling? And I was like, what, is that possible? Because this was pre-pandemic times. And then I said, well, but I couldn't travel to Vancouver every other week. And she said, well, what if you hired a line producer in Vancouver that you really trusted, that you picked, that could be your boots on the ground there, that could report back to you, and then you report back to me. And she just made it work. And by the time I walked out of her office, I had accepted a roll-on sausage party. And I will tell you, I was fierce on that film, worked really hard for them, got that thing in for $22 million all in, which is unheard of for a feature. To this day, I think it's the most profitable animated film that Sony's done. And thank God for Megan Ellison for making that work for me. She was willing to be flexible and I was willing to be twice as fierce for her. And so yeah, that's a lesson that I took with me. And that's why even on my show today, you know, if someone is willing to do it, let them figure it out. And my God, they will work so hard, you know, just for the fact that you gave them that opportunity.
Can I also say, but also asking for what you need.
Yes.
That you opened up to her and could have that conversation about, I think there's such a fear, whether we talk about salary negotiating or just saying like, look, I have this like personal thing I have to deal with once a week. Have that conversation. If you've gone as far as actually getting in the door and having an interview, don't be afraid to have that conversation and who knows what can come out of it. I think it's, you know, especially we talk about that with the salary thing. This is still an issue that we all see and deal with. And
Absolutely. And that's why that goes back to us in leadership, allowing them to believe that we'll listen to them, because there is no way I would have told Seth that or any of the other guys on the on the project. But when Megan asked, I believed she was going to hear me.
Right. And the empowered women empower women.
Yeah, that's right.
So I know that we're kind of coming to the close of our time. So I wanted to just ask like two not so quick, but kind of quick questions. One of which is, I think, you know, for a lot of people just entering into the industry, it is probably very nerve-wracking to create and maintain like connections, as well as put themselves out on the line, and potentially, and to absolutely face consistent rejection, be that at work, be that with pitches. Do you have any personal advice for people coming into the industry about, you know, how to deal with that nervousness, how to deal with the anxiety of being making connections with people they may not know, but then also, you know, facing the rejection part of what every day is like working in animation?
Jen?
Kate. Go, Kate.
Can I say this all sounds very familiar to our actual lives today? So rejection never goes away. You know, it's a subjective, creative business. And I think a lot of the work that I'm still learning and growing is be as aware of the market as you possibly can be. Right. So if you have an opportunity to pitch, whether it's the elevator pitch or actually getting into the studio to pitch, you should already know what is working best for that studio, what the market's looking like right now, even better than maybe that executive does. Like who knows where they're coming from. But if you pay attention to that stuff, you're much more, you kind of remove some of the no's and some of the initial concerns they might have. That does mean as the business changes, we all deal with the idea that like right now, companies are buying companies are buying companies. There are changes every day of who's doing children and family, who's doing the more adult work, who's actually open. There's a lot of freezes, etc. And I think currently where we might have to do something like Spider-Verse, where they're comfortable with mass audience friendly IP. And right now they're going to be buying a lot of IP that's like that. But can we at least get in there and like Peter Ramsey, take a diverse approach to the production that, thank God, then blew people's minds. And we proved out that there is a storytelling there that even though it's mass appeal or 4-quadrant audience, that the audience is there for it. But I think a lot of it is, it's still true to this day. Look, there's going to be no after no, and it's a numbers game. And I think, I'm never sad about a no, because at least I had a conversation with somebody. I got a chance to talk to them. I maybe learned what they were looking for, or they like the storytelling, but it's not what they need at that point. They might share with you, like, we're looking at a lot of mysteries right now, or coming of age projects, and do you have anything like this? So you can kind of pivot and at least go away and start thinking about something that's closer to what they want. I don't know, Jen, do you?
There's a couple things in that. I think a big thing when you're first starting out is not to take any of this personally. I think it's really, really hard to not, but you really shouldn't take it personally. If someone tells you no, think of it like casting on a movie. You wouldn't cast a certain actor for a certain role. It just would be bad casting. It doesn't reflect badly on the actor. You wouldn't put Al Pacino in a role for, I don't know, a comedian or something. Well, maybe in his case you could, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
You don't feel bad if you're not cast for a role that you are not suited for. So don't take it personally if someone tells you no. You'll find something that's better suited for you. The other thing is, once you are in the room, I think that, especially for women, the idea of feeling self-conscious when you walk in and think, are they looking at me? Am I going to fail? Am I going to say something stupid? Am I going to sound like an idiot when I say something or comment on something? You are there for a reason. And I think it's helpful to not think of it about yourself. Again, don't take it personally. It's not about you. It's about the project. Your job is there to ferociously protect this project. You are there to make sure that it lives. So it's a lot easier to be fiercely protective and voice your opinions and try to fight for something if you're not thinking about it as yourself. If you think about it, this is something that I'm trying to help survive and bring out to the world, then you will fight tooth and nail for it. And so I think that's helpful to sort of view things of how you can be a fierce protector for your project rather than worrying about whether you even belong there.
Yeah.
And
I would also add that it's so important to find a group, that can hold you up, that you can talk to, that you can support. I know Kate has definitely been one of the main people that does that for me. And we have a group of girlfriends that understand one another, that are in this industry. And, just to be able to call and like cry when something didn't work out and be lifted up by them again, that makes all the difference, is to have that emotional support and just elevation. And then as a footnote, what I would say, once you do get into the job, if you are feeling like, why aren't they seeing me? Why am I struggling? Why didn't I get that? Something I learned early on is be the one to take on the jobs nobody else wants. You will make yourself invaluable. For example, if morale is low and everyone's like, oh, morale's so low, be the one to go, you know what, I'm going to organize and start monthly birthday parties, or be the one to say, oh my God, that, there's a problem artist and everyone's ignoring it. No one wants to talk. Be the one to volunteer to go and have a conversation with them. If you're able to run towards what everyone else is running away from, you will gain a reputation that is way beyond like any skill that you can possibly offer. So that's a way to kind of, if you're finding like doors closing, again, find a window, make your own ladder, and find an open window. There's way more of them. People just,
and I think that's
for
like, you look at the IMDb list and you look at people's resumes, and I think all of the reason that the three of us are where we are does not show up anywhere on those lists, right? They were all the tiny little jobs that nobody wanted, that you go like, okay, like we have to make a commercial, we have to do a short, we have to do like just take care of people on a Saturday that are working hard, like go get some smoothies and make it happen.
Yeah, you do it well, you do it joyfully. People will notice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I know we're out of time. For everyone watching, we could literally talk for like 15 hours. So if anyone wants a part 2, you know, shout out to Girl. But what we'll do is, you know, we'll share, if anyone's on the panels is comfortable with it, we'll share people's contact information or, you know, places where you could reach us. We're also going to be sending out a list of resources for the animation industry. I know that we've mentioned a couple groups like Rise Up Animation, Latinx in Animation, Black and Animated. There are so many groups who are looking to, you know, make the animation industry a more open, diverse, inclusive, and equitable space, as well as demystify the animation industry so that, you know, more people know that they have a lot of options available to them. So we'll be sharing a very big, awesome list with everyone. And yeah,
On the creative side, and we can add these to the list, but I was thinking about when we were talking about specific storytelling, sites like A Mighty Girl and Stage 32 that I hadn't put on that original one, that just kind of like blew my mind and opened up the world of you could be anybody anywhere in the world and have access to people that will read your creative, give you feedback, give you notes. So Stage 32 is really great for that. And A Mighty Girl is just something I love, and I check every week and kind of go through what are the new books coming out and what's at all levels, like what's happening. I'm still reading lots of young adult novels, but sites like that just have made a real difference in finding that inclusive storytelling.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you again, Kate, Jennifer, Pilar. Thank you so much for being here. Like, I am such a big fan of each and every one of you. Thank you for being so generous with your time and your experience. It's been so lovely to make new connections. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for.
We're a fan
for
of yours
everything.
too, Rachel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you so
Wonderful chatting with you.
much.
You're very welcome. And thank
Now
you.
let's go for drinks, ladies.
Yeah, let's go. We're gonna do part 2, private part 2. But I do know, please next Friday, we are please join us next Friday, March 31st at 7 p.m. At the Psy Auditorium located at 685 Commonwealth Avenue, where we will be screening our best student films at the Redstone Film Festival, which is an amazing, amazing film festival. Please come. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. and we would absolutely love to see you there. Make sure to email Allison at alhoyt@bu.edu. Again, that is alhoyt@bu.edu if you'd like to attend. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Super appreciative. And yeah, please reach out to us. I know that we shared our socials and everything like that, and we'll also share contact info as people are comfortable.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it. Good chatting with you all.